Thanks for tuning in for another Climbing Business Journal podcast. I'm your host today, Scott Rennick, and I am very excited about our guest today. She is a real heavy hitter in the industry. She's been along in the industry for decades. Anne-Worley Moelter. You probably know her as the CEO of Movement Climbing Gyms. Right now, she's leading that organization, the biggest chain in, I think, the world, certainly North America. But her career started a lot earlier than that. In fact, I got to know her when she was running her first job in the industry. Was one of the assistant managers at one of the local climbing gyms here in Boulder about 25 years ago. And so we'll talk about her career, her insights, things that she's learned, and we'll get under the hood at Movement a little bit here, what she has to say about what's going on there. And hopefully you'll have a great time with this along with us on this conversation. So stay tuned. Before we get started, got a couple messages from our sponsors. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to do these podcasts. So we'll get started here in a minute. Rooney. Out of Norway, Rooney makes chalk and apparel for climbers, inspired by YouTuber Magnus Mitbo. Learn more at rungne.com. Rock Gym Pro. Since 2008, Rock Gym Pro gym management software has powered climbing facilities across the globe. Learn more at rockgympro.com. Kilter. Designers of holds, macros, and the Kilter board, Kilter also provides adjustable walls and custom flooring. Learn more at settercloset.com. Strati. Family owned and operated, Strati installs and refurbishes landing surfaces for any climbing wall. Learn more at straticlimbing.com. Trango. For decades, Trango has made gear for every kind of climbing, including sport, trad, bouldering, alpine, ice, and mountaineering. Learn more at trango.com. Hello, welcome to the CBJ podcast. I am your host, Scott Rennick, and I am sitting here today with who I believe one of the most important people in our industry, most powerful people in our industry. She's going to blush at that. Anne-Worley Moelter, the current CEO, co-founder of the original Movement Gyms. Thanks for being here, Worley.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm really looking forward to having a good conversation with you today.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a while. And, we've known each other for a minute. And I don't want to sound creepy, but I've followed your career a little bit. Here, let me see if I could lay that out. Cause there's a lot of things that we could get into. We're both lifelong climbers. We both have tons of history in, Boulder and all the things that have happened in Boulder over the last 25 years. We're both deep into the comp scene for periods of our lives and currently for you. But I'm kind of hoping that we can focus this conversation on topics about the industry and climbing gyms. And, that's kind of the folks that tend to follow CBJ, and see if we can share things about movement, they can learn things about you, and then have a little fun in the process. But to introduce you, let me see if I can get this right. Okay. So I know I was off by a couple of months, but I believe I met you when you first entered this industry. Is late 2000, early 2001. Yeah. I walked into the Boulder Rock Club. They were planning to host the ABS2 National Championships. At that time, I was running the ABS. I was coming in to meet Mike Moelter for the first time. And you were behind the desk. I was like, oh, nice to meet you, Anne-Worley. I don't know how to do that name right, but I'm sure I'll trip on that. And I met Mike, and we talked about the comp. And fast forward through the years, you were one of the people that ran that gym. You came on with Mike with my business, what was the American Bouldering Series. We were business partners for a little while. Yeah. I left, and that merged into the USA Climbing, and you ended up being the CEO of USA Climbing or president for a couple of years. Yeah. And then towards the end of that, around 2008, 2009, you decided you wanted to build your own gym, and you and Mike founded the original Movement in Boulder, Colorado, and then grew that to two more facilities down in Denver. Ended up guiding that into the the El Cap group that ultimately became Movement Gyms. They rebranded all of those chains. And even like very, very recently, like 2 years ago or so, you became the CEO. And then very recently, you also, and I don't think we'll get right into this too hard. You're a vice president of what's now World Climbing, the IFSC as well. Yeah. And so, what did I miss in your career? What's
well done. That I think is a good summary, and but also I'll just say a big kudos right back at you, because I think if you had not extended the opportunity for Mike and me to work with you at the ABS, who knows what would have happened. And so you likewise have been a pillar in this industry in terms of where we've been, and I think where we're going. So thank you for all that you've done.
Giving me goosebumps. We never knew it back in the day, right? We were just having a good time throwing comps for our community, having fun, right?
Yeah, working hard.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah. So, jumping right into it, and we could take side trips here, but, you got called back into action. I have to admit, when I saw the merger, the Planet Granite and Earthtrex had merged at one point. I should have the date in front of me. I think it was about 5 years ago. And then you brought the Movement, brand chain into the fold. And I thought you and Mike would be like gone, because I have a lot of respect for you. I think you're one of the people that has really driven our industry forward. I figured you would be like off to tech or off to some other big fancy industry making huge money and jet setting around the world or something. But then they pulled you back in as CEO. You got invited back in later in the game. Can you tell me a little bit about what happened there? Like why were you pulled? Why did you rejoin the organization after that?
You bet. It's funny you mentioned tech, just as a passing comment, because the beginning of my career actually was in tech. And I worked down in Texas for a little bit before realizing that I wanted to be up here in Colorado. And then I got another tech job here in Denver, and I worked there for 4 days before I realized that was not where I was supposed to be. Yeah. And so then started my journey in the industry now. And I say that because, our industry in terms of relativity is still quite young, quite nascent in terms of growth, depending on how you count. And you probably know, like let's say quote unquote 30 years into it in terms of like the indoor climbing and fitness facilities. And so it's a unique industry in that I think the folks that can combine a pretty strong business acumen with a nuanced and deep understanding of our industry are positioned well to help the industry grow. And so with my business background, and then obviously having been in the industry for over 25 years, it just was the right move to take this seat again, if you will, for Movement. And when Mike and I merged with the bigger company in 2019, he continued working on expansion in terms of like real estate and pipeline. And then I actually took a seat on the board. So I was still involved on a very regular, in fact, weekly basis with Movement in that couple-year interim. Yeah. And so then when I took over, call it 18 plus 20 months ago, it was just, coming back into a full-time position.
They had a couple of people in that role before you. And I have to admit, when I heard that you were going to take that role, I was like, oh, like somehow my whole stress level, because I get attached to this industry and this community, it's like, oh, we're in better hands now. Oh, and I know you can't say anything about those guys. But I was like, oh, this is good for us because, Movement's the biggest thing that's happening in our industry, really, other than maybe USA Climbing. If you kind of want to consider that as an entity, it's a different thing. But, what's good for Movement is good for our industry, I believe, on a lot of levels. And so, it was good to hear you come back. What's been really fun about that? Like it's a different role than when you stepped away. You were just running 3 gyms and now you're running 30.
Yeah, 33, actually.
33.
Yeah.
Fact check me.
It's crazy. No, it's crazy, but it's wonderful. I mean, I have such a deep belief in this industry and movement as a company and just what we're doing on an everyday basis. And it's been really fun to come back in at this stage in the game and work with a broader team that spreads across the country, and to get to visit with everybody in all the various regions, and to think about all the innovations that we're striving for as movement, and then again as an industry. And there's still so much growth for our industry in a positive way, and I'm really excited to be a part of that.
We'll come back to a couple of those things.
Sure.
That's for sure. Yeah, you've been CEO, like, so that's the industry. I'm just curious a little bit about your personal experiences. Like,
Yeah.
you've had this kind of CEO role now 3 times. You ran the comp scene on a national level.
Mm-hmm.
Then you jumped into this role running single gym that changed into 3 gyms. And of course,
Right.
everybody that you had worked with as the CEO of USA Climbing, they were kind of your peers. You got to know them from the comp perspective, and then all of a sudden you're one of them. And then this new role is very different, I imagine. But how has that? Your personal career, what you get out of the job? How's that evolved over these shifts in your CEO-ship?
When I don't know, honestly, when I think about the change of it, sure, it's some of the landscape has changed, but it's still very similar to when we were doing ABS Nationals out at, some of the California gyms, and making it happen. And part of it is, again, just the people with whom we get to work and the impact that we have as an industry. And that's really what gets me up every day and gets me psyched to, quote unquote, come to work, is getting to do what we've always done, which is spreading the love of climbing. And that has morphed over the years and has started to include yoga and fitness and community spaces and all of that. But climbing in and of itself is an incredibly unique thing. And it is so cool to me how such a wide variety of people can experience climbing in a variety of ways, but you all get to do it together. And at the same time, it's like a singular pursuit, both of passion and accomplishment. And so it's all those things that they've been the same all along, and that hasn't changed. And sure, like the type of things that I'm doing has changed, but it's still the same at the core.
What you get as an individual or community. Yeah. I feel a lot of the same. It's funny because 25 years passed, and I was like, well, sure, there's all these giant holds and the gyms have gotten bigger, and there's, everybody's using an app now for tracking their climbing, but I feel like it hasn't much. But, we get older and we get different things out of it. That's we kind of skipped that. Let me go back just a minute and ask, how did you find climbing before it became a career? What's your origin story for that?
I was a teenager at summer camp, and one of my counselors said, I think you'd really like climbing. And I said, I'm afraid of heights. And she said, well, come up to the crag and see what you think. And so I did, and I climbed, and I was hooked. And from there, I started also working with a group called Moon Dance Adventures that takes kids on outdoor trips, so climbing and hiking and the rest of it. And so I led that for a while. And then once I got to Colorado, the rest is history. So it's been a part of my life for 30 plus 35 years. So quite a while.
You started with a summer camp.
Yeah.
And then you got hooked into outdoor instruction.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I didn't know that piece about you. And that was that in North Carolina?
Well, the group Moon Dance Adventures at the time was, now they're based out of Nashville, Tennessee, but we would do our staff training here in Colorado. And then I led trips in Washington, Oregon, Wyoming, Colorado, just kind of all around the West and the Pacific Northwest for several years.
And it probably spanned climbing. You were probably doing like camping and backpacking and other stuff.
All the things. Yep.
It's fascinating because we've known each other for a long time. I didn't know that about you. That's kind of close to my background. I got in through Boy Scouts summer camp, and I led kids trips. We didn't do it exotically. It was just in Indiana. But
Indiana's got great stuff too.
We had a good time. We still jumped off cliffs with ropes. Not really jumped, but um, and I could go farther that into that, but I'm just curious a little bit, because this has been a profound experience for me. I've been climbing about the same long amount of time. What is climbing to you over this period of time? Like, I know what I was getting out of it in my 20s and teens is not what I'm getting out of it in my late 40s.
Yeah.
And is that kind of shaped your perception of climbing? We see it. We see all the people in our community getting all of these benefits, but then we personally kind of have this evolution through that space in my mind. Is that
Right.
what would you say about that?
Yes, of course. There were times where I had more time to project really hard stuff, and I still like to project things, and I'm still pushing what I can do, but it is so much about the relationships for me. Like, I still, during this time of year, one of my favorite things is to go down to Waco and climb with my buddies down there. And the time that you get when you're outside with your friends is unbelievable, And then not only that, because then you build in the indoor component too, right? And I think but I've had one friend, and she and I've been climbing almost every week for over 20 years at this point in time. And so it's those relational pieces that I find so rewarding. And now, of course, I have kids. And so we take friends and families out all the time, like on ropes and bouldering and all the rest of it. And so I just try to combine all of it in terms of having time with people. But I like to get after it. I like to try hard. I like to see what I can do and do it as often as I can.
And all the things. I mean, we're blessed to live in a place like Boulder where we can, we have a long season and we have a lot of diversity around here. So I think when we did an article with you, when you took over the CEO role, and you sent a bunch of pictures, and we posted. I think there's one of those quintessential. You're topping out one of the flat irons, and you're scrambling gear, and it was like, that's so Boulder. And anybody that's listening, if you come to Boulder, if you have that skills and the mindset, that's such an awesome experience to go run on the flat irons.
Awesome.
So, and with friends for life. That's a tagline. Yeah, I've worked in climbing gyms too, not only CBJ, and friends for life is something that I've kind of I centered around. And again, it's sometimes you run into them around town. You're like, oh,
yeah, or around the country, like when you're traveling. I mean, it's awesome.
It's still a small community, isn't it? It's crazy like that.
I tell you, for sure.
Yeah, you run into people that all over. Okay, so thanks for letting me get into climbing, because that's at the end of the day, that's what we all like. I agree that my role at CBJ, I can help people grow and more people find it. So hopefully we'll touch back on that at the end of the conversation. I have a little different line of questioning, but kind of back to work and see, you're in the CEO role, and how many people work at Movement these days? How many employees do you have?
We have just over 2,100 folks that we work with.
2,100. That is mind blowing. I heard, I know you've had these, you call it leadership summits, movement summits. What do you call them?
Summits. That's right. Yep. Leadership summits.
You've had a couple of those now. And I think you get together 100 plus of your top managers once a year or so to, powwow and, get aligned and probably try to find new innovations and ideas. I think there's a lot of gyms that would, it's almost hard to relate to that, because, they had their 30 people that, what it's like. You had you ran your own gym. How many people worked at Movement when you started and when you had one gym?
Yeah, the first gym was probably we started with probably about 35. And then each of the 3 gyms here in Colorado that we did, I think they leveled out between 50 and 60 team members per facility. But that's where the idea started from. I mean, we would have our full team meetings a couple times a year in each of the facilities. So the whole team would come together. And we would talk about updates and things we're doing, but it's also just a chance for everybody to get together and to meet people if they haven't met people, and to have time together. And so these leadership summits are no different. When I took the role last year, that was one of the first things that we put on the calendar. And yes, it's no small feat to bring over 100 people. We all come here to Boulder, and most folks that aren't local stay in one hotel. And so we do the afternoon in the Boulder facility, and then we go across the street to our friends over at Rayback Collective, and we are there the next day. And so there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of learning, and then there's just a lot of hanging out and getting to know each other as people and as humans. And we did the second one this October. And I love those. If we could do them all the time, that would be my preference. But for now, I'll settle for once a year.
And it's an outgrowth from what you did with when you were one location.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We got to get together and just have fun, not just run the business.
Yeah.
Maybe that your answer is going to be that's a part of it, but talking about teams, one of the biggest struggles that you hear across the industry is keeping good people on your team for a long time. This, staff retention. And, I kind of see there's two pieces that play in my mind. There's a little tension between, historically, we've been this lifestyle industry where so much of it has just been about passion, and nobody makes any money, and everybody knows that, the margins are tight and the owner's not even making anything. And, you and I, when we were running comps, we wouldn't get paid for that work. We'd show up and put in dozens and dozens of hours and you didn't get paid. And that was that's part of life. That's part of what working in the climbing industry is. But then also, today, that's not true. And it's not really possible because we've gotten to be too much of a business. But it's not really true. There are some opportunities. You maybe 25 years ago, if you were the owner or the GM, you could pay your rent or you pay your mortgage. Yeah. You could always cover rent, but now there are careers and, there are, there's this barometer in our culture. We want to make 6 digits. Everyone, you gotta break 6 digits. And I know you can't talk that detail, but I know some folks that work for you that are making that kind of money. They've been around a long time, and other chains and other big, other multi locations. You can do that now. Yeah. Those roles are pretty sparse and they don't turn over very often. And that's a big hang up to people, especially in the route setting. There's so many route setters and the head setter roles are taken. And it's not going to turn over for 10 years or 15 years. So where do you progress in your career? So there's this thing about we're growing, but there's this limit to where you can go. And then, hey, there's part of the old school me is hey, you just be happy you're getting paid for this stuff. All right. And that's not valid. People are going to get offended by that. But what do you tell people that want to enter the industry or have been in the industry? Maybe they're hitting that ceiling or they see that. And what do you have any words of advice or insight about that space?
Sure. I would start by saying I'm really proud of where we have come as an industry over the last 2.5 decades, because it did used to be like you're describing. And I think now we've gotten to a point where people can have careers in this industry. And that is a phenomenal thing. I would also say that, all of the companies in this industry, we are that. We are businesses. We are companies. And in any company, there isn't just unlimited growth potential in every single position. So there's always going to be positions that are specifically focused to be more part-time, or positions that are focused to be full-time, and then career positions. So there's always a variety of types of roles and relative responsibilities in any company. And one of the things that I think is really fantastic about having a company that has the reach that we do are a couple of things. So first of all, I'll go back in time just a little bit, because it's not just about the career progression, but it's also about building a skill set. And so often we have folks that will come in to work in a climbing and fitness facility or movement specifically, and they know that they're there for a finite amount of time. But it's so important that they're also gaining the skills that they're going to use in whatever else it is that they're going to do later. And for example, like two folks in particular come to mind. One, a young man named John worked with us at the Boulder location at the front desk, and he was getting his PhD in resource actually, but really also wanted to have a skill set in hospitality and communication. So he had a part-time job with us while he worked on his PhD, completed that, and then of course moved on to do what he's doing now. And so there's that type of skill set building. And then another example is a young woman named Katie who worked at the front desk. She actually worked in the Patagonia retail store here in Boulder, and then worked with us at the front desk and movement. And likewise, she knew she wanted to be in the industry, but didn't know what she wanted to do, and has had a pretty prominent role now at TNF for years, because she came in and she's like, okay, I want to get to know folks in the industry, and I love climbing, and what can I do? And so she found her place. So there's that type of career growth that people can have. And then there also is lateral growth. So what's been really interesting to me is recently I've been in several conversations where folks at Movement have expressed interest. They might be in operations, for example, like in one of the gyms, and they say, well, I'm really curious about HR or IT or finance or whatever the case may be. And so they can work with the folks that are in those departments at Movement to understand more about what a role in that field might look like, whether or not it's with us or somewhere else. So there's lateral growth that can occur. And then, of course, there is the long-term career growth that a lot of folks have had. And that to me is one of the coolest aspects about what we have been able to do in the last couple of decades. I mean, you've got people like Ryan Sewell, for example, who competed as a teenager in USAC and now he's the VP of experience and route setting at Movement. You've got Danielle Sonkrant, who came up through BP and had jobs there and now is with us over at Movement on culture. We've got Charlotte Bosley, who competed with us in ABS Nationals, who came up through marketing. You've got folks like there's a young woman, Ariel, who just took a gym director role and has worked starting at a front desk position, and now she's running the gym. You've got folks like Duncan Goff, who started also as a front desk, and now he's a head route setter. So you've got so many stories of people that come in and progress in a variety of different ways. And so I think actually it's pretty darn impressive what folks are doing in this industry right now.
I'm hearing you say we're like career incubators on a lot of level. Like everybody's looking at it wrong. There might, there's actually a ton of opportunity, maybe even more in the smaller gym, just because you're like shoulder to shoulder with the different operational groups of the facility. Huh.
Absolutely. You learn a lot.
Did you have that? It's like with 30 gyms, it's a little easier, I would say, to do that. There's probably just more of these roles.
Yes.
But did you find that the case? Did you have the same kind of attitude or perspective about that when you were just one gym? When there's like, you don't have, there's one head setters, there's one head coach to talk to, the HR is a part-time role that you're carrying on your own alongside running the thing, Yes. Is that something that has evolved over time? How you look at that?
I think so. I mean, certainly if you have one or two facilities, I would say there's not quite as much opportunity to stay within that company and keep progressing in your career in a specific position. So of course, there's more leverage as you have more facilities where if a role opens up in California, you might move out there or to DC or whatever the case may be. So I think that comes with any business when it comes to size. But even as one or three facilities like we really focused on the skill sets that we could give people. So, I have often said that I really want to get to a place where when someone lists Movement on their resume and they're applying for a job like in tech or, water conservation or whatever it is, that people look and say, oh, Movement. Okay, I know this person has learned A, B, C, and D skills, and they're going to be a great asset to our company. And you can do that even with 1 to 3 facilities. It doesn't have to be 33 facilities.
Now, I'm asking these questions, but I can agree wholeheartedly. I've spent nearly half of my career as some sort of a manager climbing gyms too. And I find um, it's better. I guess it's better to look at that way, is that we're this incubator. We're this space that maybe you weren't intended to within this gym rise up to be the GM. And if that's your goal, you're going to struggle with that. That might be a tough spot. But if you're looking to build the experience and the skill set and you don't mind kind of jumping around, and, you internally have the option to probably send people from one facility to the other in the course of promotions. But there's a lot of, setting your own business aside, there's a lot of hopscotching around. And, if we look through those 100 people that you get together for leadership, a bunch of those have worked at other gyms, and probably a bunch of those over the next couple of years will move to other gyms as they proceed with their career. And so, what do you say about that?
Important point, because the beauty of having what I would consider still a relatively small industry is that if you're working at a gym right now that it's a single gym, or there's 3 gyms in a small municipality or whatever it is, you get to know folks in the industry. You go to the CWA summit, you travel around. And so as something else might come available at another facility in another location, why not put your hat in the ring for that one? And that's what I think is also really cool about working in our industry, is folks generally are really supportive. One of the most bittersweet things for me is when folks since forever is when folks come and say, I've decided that I'm going to go do such and such. And it might be moving to a different state with a different gym, or it could be changing careers entirely. And I say it's bittersweet because, I don't want them to leave, but at the same time, all I want is the best growth for them. And that if that's the next best move for them, then I wish them the best of luck. And so I think folks keeping that in mind is that there's a whole host of opportunity out there, and it just looks different for everybody.
And that student that's getting their PhD or master's degree, mm-hmm. I think probably almost every gym in existence has had that. Mm-hmm. And that person's going to move on. And so, yeah. I think as a business, if we can kind of embrace this incubator mentorship model, then it's, and we've said that about route setting lately, because we have a lot of these monthly conversations about route setting. We go kind of deep on that. Is like, it's going to turn over, but mm-hmm. if you have this again, you have this training mentality, mentorship mentality on the team, you're like always helping people advance. Mm-hmm. And always setting them up for ultimately if they want to stay in the career, they probably going to work for a competitor or move markets and work for a different gym, but that's good for them. And as long as you have that mechanism internally, it's not painful, because I think there's the gyms that this retention question, it can mm-hmm. be really painful. It's like, whoa, I just lost this person that I've invested years in and they're gone. Yeah. But maybe that's the signal that they haven't run their internal operations kind of in the best of way, because if it's that painful, you weren't training the next person, you weren't getting ready for that. I don't know.
It could be. Yeah.
Okay. Just quick, across any disciplines, what do you think are the biggest skills if someone wants to work in this industry and stay in this industry? What would you say? What they should really be, back to the skill set?
I think one of the best skills that folks can have really is strong communication skills. That's where it all starts. And so, being able to work productively with fellow team members, to work with members and guests, those are the type of soft skills that can take anybody far in what they're doing. And then, of course, the other thing I would say is, in terms of being part of the industry, like, sample the product. If you're climbing or doing yoga or doing fitness, be part of the community, because that's ultimately every single one of us that has been doing this for a long time. That's what it's all about, is the community. And it doesn't matter whether or not it doesn't matter the grade you climb, or, how long you can hold a yoga pose, or how much you can deadlift. Like, that's irrelevant. But the point is that you enjoy connecting with the folks in the community. And then once you do get into it, if you do have a capability and an interest to learn, whether it is coaching or route setting or whatever it is, it's likely that your facility where you work, can offer furthering education for you so that you can hone that craft and then figure out where you want to take it from there.
I love that advice. I hadn't heard that before. Like, just like plug in, try the things that we have to offer, and really make sure you're part of the community. I think that's, I think my own situation, and also people that I can recollect that maybe have struggled in their career, that maybe they didn't do that. We silo. We're a route setter and we hang out with the route setting crew, or we're this thing. And, yeah, maybe broadening that is one of the answers.
Two things there, Scott. What's interesting is that since COVID and folks have realized that you can work remotely, I think that has been one fundamental shift that I have seen. And I work partly at home, partly on the road, partly in the gyms. It's a mix for me too, absolutely. But I try to be in the gyms as much as I can because that's what we're doing. Like, we're in the climbing and fitness facility business. And so I think anybody who's going to succeed has to have somewhat of an innate attraction to being in the facilities and participating. And then the second point I would make on what you just said is that there aren't these silos of people in these facilities. Like, we're all coming in and seeing something that we want to participate in. And sure, like, your job may be as a route setter or as a fitness instructor or a front desk team member, but we're all there for the same reason in the same space. And I love watching the cross-pollination of all of the things and all of the people, because your world opens up the more people you meet. And so I think that's a really important aspect of it.
I think that's anybody taking notes for their career. Go do the thing that you're not doing yet in your gym. Go try it out. Go sample it. Yeah. All right. We're already, half an hour into this call. I need to bring up one of the big topics. There's a lot of things, a lot of news about movement, and the last couple of years, a lot of it's been about the union activity going on, and it's not just movement, of course. It's happening in California at the Touchstone gyms. It's happening at other facilities. Actually, just, before the new year, a single location, I won't name them out loud, but a single location got unionized, where it's just like, it's still a mom and pop shop. So a lot of people think that this issue is just about the big, I'm going to say megacorp, which we know even with 2,100 staff, you're not even close to a megacorp. But we think it's just the big boys and the big industry players that are dealing with this issue. No, it's really widespread across the industry. And of course it's localized, but yeah. You've been in the news. There's a lot of concerns. It's not just about compensation. It's about other workplace issues. And you've been in the news. The first gym that was ever unionized was the Crystal City gym out on the East Coast. And then even most recently, I saw there was like a group of your staff that came out and talked with you in Boulder, about ultimately the unionization process is about coming up with a labor contract. And so, they had some questions about it works with, struggle with that. They had some issues with that they want to talk to you about. So, maybe just first, here's a chance, to talk to the industry. You're a human. I know there's legal constraints when we get into this space, but you're a human. The people that work for you are human. You're trying to be human to your staff. And I'm sure some movement employees are going to be listening to this. Mm-hmm. Do you have a message that you can put out to them? What would you like to say to folks that are involved in this process, contemplating getting involved in this process? Yeah. Do you have anything to say?
The elephant in the room, right? I will preface it by saying, I suspected this might come up in the conversation today. And so I did actually reach out to legal to understand, what I can say. And that isn't just some boilerplate response. And I thought it might be helpful to talk just a little bit about what that means. First and foremost, I do want to say that whether or not an individual chooses to vote to be part of a unionized facility is a deeply personal decision. And it is not something that anybody can say is right, wrong, or otherwise. What I can say is that when there is a vote at a facility, every person's vote does impact the overall workplace and what happens there. And so what I mean by that is when a facility votes to form a union, they are voting to choose to funnel all communication through a chosen union representative. So when that happens, no longer can gym directors talk directly with the team members about anything regarding benefits, the workplace, et cetera. They have to go through this elected union representative. And so the reason I have to, there are certain things we can discuss and certain things we can't is because there's something called direct dealing, where if the union representative believes that, for example, a gym director is speaking directly to a team member, they might say that the gym director was trying to influence a team member to do something one way or the other. And so it takes away that ability for the gym director to have direct conversations. And the way that, like, an example of how that might show up could be in extenuating circumstances. So in a facility that is not unionized, I sometimes use this example, like if you've used your time off and then all of a sudden you injure your knee and you need to take some additional time off, you can go to the gym director and say, hey, this is happening. Can I go ahead and take a little bit of extra time and we'll just pay it forward for what's coming down the pipeline? And the director can work directly with that team member. Once a gym is unionized, that opportunity and capability is no longer there. And so it creates a different set of characteristics around how communication has to happen. And so fundamentally, it just changes the landscape of the relationship between the team members and the directors. And, Scott, you mentioned I'm human and we're all human. And I think that's the one thing that I would encourage everyone to do is to continue the conversations first. And ultimately and personally, I want what's best for this industry. And I want to see us continue to grow. And I want to see continued progress being made in all of our facilities and for all of our team members and all of our workplace environments. And I want to see people continue to act with integrity. And as we move through this, this is new for our industry. And so we're learning our way through this. And, it was hard to see my name in print because what happened was we had actually just finished the leadership summit you were referencing earlier. And we had these 2 amazing days. And I got a phone call that about a half dozen team members had showed up at the Boulder location and wanted to meet with me. And so it was a surprise. No one knew that they were coming out here. And so I dropped everything, cleared my schedule. I went to the gym to meet with them and to hear them. And I encouraged them to ask questions. They had flown out here to see me and answered everything that I could. And of course, like I was speaking a moment ago, you do have to sit down and have like formal bargaining sessions, like formal negotiation sections where we have the movement representative and the union representative. And this was not that. This was team members coming out to ask me questions about my perspective on things. And so we had what I thought was a good conversation and a positive conversation. And so, if I'm honest, I felt slighted when I saw all of that come out. But I hope that people that do know me in this industry and do know movement know that I only want what is best. And we are all trying so hard to do that and to make that true. And so that's moving forward. I just, I don't know how the story unfolds. Like, we're all going to see, but everybody has my word that I will continue to do my best in this entire situation.
Yeah, and for listeners that maybe don't know the background, I'm gonna go into this just a little bit more because it's kind of big. And to your point, this is all new. Like, we haven't been through any cycles or reps of this. There's no playbook. We're tackling this in a totally new way. But this group came out and they asked to meet with you, and I look at what happened, and I'm not a lawyer and I haven't sat in your seat, but there's a part of me that says, man, it sounds like legally you shouldn't have agreed to meet with them. I'm not sure what you're going to be able to comment about that, but like that you did try to be human. You wanted to sit down, and of course they had a union rep on hand, and you didn't have the chance to have your legal because it was kind of a surprise. And so to kind of flatten the playing field and get past that piece, I know that you probably tried to be human and sit down and hear them out. They had made this journey to Boulder, but ultimately it backfired. And what you referenced is like they filed a lawsuit against you. They called this an unfair labor practice.
Yeah, well, and just technically speaking, it isn't a lawsuit; it is an unfair labor practice.
Okay.
And I don't. I would have to check to see if it's been filed because I don't know for sure. But the important thing is what you said is that, I didn't have to go meet with them. But I thought it was the right thing to do, and they're fellow team members, and they took the time to come out here. So, I thought the least I could do is go and sit down and talk with them. And so I made that choice to do it. And in a do-over, I still would probably make the same decision and go talk to them, because at the end of the day, we are all team members at the same company. And the only way that we're going to figure any of this out is to treat each other with respect and to be committed to having dialogue. And so that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah. Integrity, your people made it out to Boulder and want to talk to you, and you talk to them. So, and the lawyer will probably tell you, don't do that again. And it's like, just say out loud for the community. Like, we'd say, what we come to this industry for is community and the relationships, and good or bad, enter the unions. You said it changes the relationship. You just can't, interact in the same ways. So I'll finish talking just a little bit about movement and then we'll move on. But I'm just curious, there are negotiations going on for this labor contract. Do you have any comments about like progress that's been made? I don't know what you can talk about, but right. Are you able to say anything about like progress that's been made, or roadblocks or hangups that have been in front of that process?
Right. You're correct. As you can imagine, I can't go deeply into this, but I can say that we have really been working in earnest on these in these contract negotiations. They're all, there are a multitude of them. And it actually has been our experience that oftentimes we have been waiting on the unions to hear back from them about proposals or dates to schedule, and we'll reach out to schedule and won't hear back. And so we have been trying to also move these along, and it's everyone is different. So it is not a blanket statement. And but in the majority of the instances, a lot of the delay has been on the side of the unions. And I'll say that there have been a lot of, it's called tentative agreements, which are pieces of the contract that you go through and you reach them as you go before you reach a final contract. And in many instances, there have been really great conversations where we have successfully reached agreement on some of these TAs, but we still have room to go. And I feel like the definition of negotiation is that, right? It's like meeting in the middle. And so my hope is that as we do continue to have conversations with these union groups, that both sides really do come to the middle, and that we can hear them and what the unions are asking for. And then also they can hear our leaders and what's possible as a business. Because at the end of the day, it has to be a combination of those two for it to be successful. And we will continue, just as we have, to be working diligently with these groups to move the contract negotiation forward.
And again, there's no template. We haven't really done this before. So as an industry on the high level. So before we move on from that topic, not movement, talking to the industry at large, again, it's one of those concerns behind closed doors. You talk to gym managers and there's concern. To your point, it changes the nature of the relationship. It kind of slows a lot of decision making down. Not to mention there's just like this cost overlay because all of a sudden there's lawyers that need to get paid and things. And so I hope I'm not offensive to the people that are on the front end as serving as our staff. But at the end of the day, I think most gyms would like to avoid this if possible. And do you have any words of advice to the gyms that what could they do to help find that kind of agreement with their staff and alignment with their staff ahead of time? Is there any, you might not be able to say anything, but is there anything you would tell the gyms that have not unionized and see that on the horizon as a specter and want to get ahead of it?
I guess I would just reiterate, it really is such a personal decision. And I don't know what the working environments look like in all the gyms across the country. Obviously, clearly you and I have visited a lot of them over the years, but principally, I think it's an amazing group of people out there. But every person in every gym has to make their own decision. And regardless of any outcome or what's on the horizon, you said alignment and conversation. Like those are the two most important things. And so for anybody, whether it's someone on the front line, whether it is a director, whether it is an owner, it goes back to what I was saying, be there, get to know each other, talk about what's important. If there's a question, don't be afraid to ask it. I'll share, I got an email from one of our team members recently with some questions. And I haven't met this young man, but I just responded to him and said, thank you for sending me a note and asking me these questions because, and I think I put this in the email, the saying, like, if it ain't, if you don't know what's broken, how can you fix it? And excuse me. And so this is no different. Like if you don't know that there's an issue or a perceived issue, like how on earth are you going to fix it? And so the first step is just having conversation. And so I think that conversation and alignment for any group of people working together is a place to start.
It's sometimes easier said than done, but it's as a business, you have to kind of create some space for that. You have to create a working environment where people feel like they can communicate. Exactly. And then just practically speaking, it's it takes time to communicate. You have to I'm a small business owner and I think about every little hour and every $20 I spend. I was I have to be willing to budget for that communication, so to speak. Spend the time talking because it's worth that spend.
It is, and I, in the first 13 or 14 months in this role, I visited every single region and most of our gyms twice. And not even part of it, the entire reason is to spend time with people. And so what that looks like is either I go and we'll sit down and have a Q&A session with various directors. I always have a climbing session where we invite all of the team members to come. Sometimes we'll do happy hours. We'll take yoga classes together. And the point of it is just that, is that we're all humans, we're all working together, and we all really love what we do. And so the more we can spend time with each other, the deeper your relationships are, and the more seamless it can be in terms of how you work together. At least that's my take on it, my opinion.
And I think that probably transcends industries and workplaces. It's
I think you're right.
Keep in touch with your teams.
Yeah.
I'd love to pivot a little bit and talk about another really much easier topic, private equity. Yeah, hopefully that's a little easier. Our listeners expect, you're the CEO of Movement. We should have a real conversation about some of the real things here. That's another shade of the perception of Movement, and another shade of their position. And and you're not exclusive in this case. Right. Lots of the big gyms, most of the big chains have some element of private equity involved, if not outright owned by investment funds. So you're not unique in that sense at all. And it's really funny because everybody, I get a lot of people that reach out to CBJ for our resources that are building their first gym, and they're like, hey, I get this question like once a month, like, how do I position my business plan so I can get private equity? And I'm like, you can't. That doesn't happen. You have to prove that you can build the thing. All of like every first gym is friends and families, and maybe crowdfunding in your community if you can a little bit. But so there's this perception, and then there's also this perception that it's like taking over and buying everything, and people are bringing billions and billions of dollars and huge mergers. And I could say from the numbers, like more than half of the gyms in America are still single gym owners. I looked at the openings from 2025. Only 20 of about 50 gyms that opened in North America last year are parts of chains even. So like 30 gyms that opened that are single owner operators. So it's still not at all the majority, but it's something that's coming, and you have a really unique kind of relationship with that, because certainly publicly, when you merged Movement into the LCAP group, which ended up becoming Movement when they took the brand and put it on all the gyms that were previously what Earth Treks and Planet Granite started, you joined, and then I think the Cliffs on the East Coast and Summit, and maybe a couple other little.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, but now it's all Movement. And so you've been in both, two different seats at least. Like, you were the single owner operator that built your baby, and then decided it was right to merge. And then now you're also coming back in, and you got to run this thing and keep it growing as well. And so I guess my first question, and it might be kind of fundamental, but like, why would I want to get into private equity if I'm a single owner operator? It's probably not even available to a single owner operator. But if I've built my business over years and I've proven my operational capacity, and private equity is knocking at my door, why would I want to answer that phone call and consider that?
It's specific for every individual, obviously. And Mike and I had conversations earlier on with our now partner, prior to them acquiring Earth Treks and Planet Granite. And that point in time, we'd actually just started plans for the Movement Rhino location. And we said to them, like, this isn't quite the right time for us. We really are excited about this next gym, and we're going to move forward with that. And so then fast forward, they acquired the other two groups, and then came back to us. And Mike and I really had some, as you can imagine, like soul searching conversations about our personal perspective at that point in time. And I'm happy to share that we saw an opportunity for our team and our gyms to broaden the reach, both in terms of growth, but also in terms of career possibility, in terms of building our team so that we have a bigger team. So we were just at that right point in our trajectory of our 3 gym group that it made sense for us because we wanted a bigger platform. We wanted the opportunity to grow. And so that's why we made that decision. And, I'm speaking about like a data set of one, in terms of working with private equity. And I'm happy to say that our working relationship has been quite good. I wouldn't have agreed to come back into this role if it wasn't a positive experience. And you didn't ask this, but I guess I'm kind of going in this direction. But they really trust our leadership team. We have a very strong and experienced leadership team at Movement, in my opinion. And they really look to us to make the decisions and to run the company. And of course, I meet with them very regularly, and I keep them apprised of our full leadership team keeps them apprised of what's going on. But we've had a really good experience working with them. And so that's again where every gym has to make the decision on their own as to like what their reason is behind why they might be considering something like that.
I have to ask, what kind of due diligence did you do when you first considered joining up? Because it's easy to look at that kind of thing skeptically, be like, yeah, they're going to say whatever they want before the deal sign, and then they own it and they can do whatever they want. Inevitably, you had to trust them too. Yeah. And it sounds like that panned out. I bet it doesn't always pan out. But like, what did you do to like suss out the relationship before it started?
A handful of things, and now I'm like dusting off a little bit of the cobwebs to remember specifically, but we met with the two main guys on multiple occasions and, got to know them. And so there's that gut level, first of all, of do you line up with these people? Like, do you match? And then the second piece was we actually called a few other companies with whom they worked so that we could talk to them directly and ask the questions without them, quote unquote, in the room or on the line, and say, tell me, what is it really like? And so I'd encourage anybody that is considering it to do those type of things, to really get to know the people that you might be working with, because, it's people would do that. Well, I would hope people would do that with any type of partner, whether it's a bank, whether it is friends and family, whether it is PE, like they're all partners. They're just different types of partners, and they're all going to have vested interests in your company and how it does and how you operate and all those things. And so, each gym has to understand what's going to be best for them as they move down the road that they're on.
Fair enough. And then, what do you think has been the downside? Inevitably, something didn't, in the net, it's been awesome, but I'm sure there's been a little baggage or downside. I don't know. And we don't want to, if your investors on there on the call, we're not trying to insult you or out you or anything, but it can't all be rainbows and sunshine. What would you say are some of the downsides of taking that on?
It's a broader team of folks with whom I work. So it's the leadership team that I'm in and day out. And then there is this smaller group of folks with whom I work on a regular basis to make sure they're apprised of what's going on. And so I would say that for me personally, and probably a few key people on our leadership team, there's quantitatively more work that has to be done just in terms of making sure that everybody's on the same page. But, knock on wood, right? There hasn't actually been, in my personal experience, too much of a negative. Is it different than when Mike and I were doing this on our own? Absolutely. Would I make the same decision? I think we would, and another, like, I don't know how this story is going to end. We'll see what occurs in the coming years. But it has been a good experience.
Yeah, it's a really interesting position in our industry. And not long ago, this was something we maybe could dream of, but it hadn't come even just, a decade ago. And now there's been quite a bit of this. And if there's this, I think a lot of gym owners have seen this possibility of this exit strategy that really didn't exist as much before. And I think my personal feeling is I think it's part of what is upping the whole professionalism of our industry is even the smaller facilities that are still independent. You're kind of seeing that as like, okay, that's kind of my retirement strategy. And so I better get my books in place now. I better run a better operation so that because, the fact that you have a smile on your face and like it means also that the timing was right and the numbers were right too. And you've been in the industry long enough. I'm sure you have peers that have the story where the timing wasn't good and the numbers weren't good, but you had to sell out, and it was it wasn't all that you were hoping. There's people that have to sell their businesses in more distressing situations, and it's not always sunshine. It's not always you look back on it and be like, yeah, that was great.
Yeah, it's a different road for everybody, right? I mean, Mike and I at the beginning were so fortunate to have friends and family that believed in us. And I mean, believe you me, well, we worked our tails off, but I mean, our brothers are in the gyms working with us and painting walls at nighttime and all the things. And then, worked hard and had growth as independent operators, as owner operators, and then joined with this bigger group who also believed in our much broader community, like our whole leadership team. And then we were able to enter into that relationship. And and it's been good. And, actually most of our leadership team with whom Mike and I worked at, our original facilities, in fact, all of them, we all still work together at Movement. And so that also has been a really cool thing to see where like, it's just like the landscape changes a little bit, like the partners look different, but you can still have the same core group of people doing the awesome things that they do.
Where do you think the future lies for private equity in our industry? Is it going to do the thing everybody thinks? It's just going to swallow it all up, and we're going to become, and your business in particular, I know you can't count, but someone comes along is even bigger, and they swallow up Movement and Touchstone and Boulder Project. That's all one big thing, or whatever. Is that our future? Do you think there's no room for the little guy, and it's all a megacorp?
No, I think private equity, I think, is here to stay in our industry. And I think people will still start gyms with friends and family, and they will use like conventional bank loans and all of these things. And my hope is that we continue to see like gym openings. I mean, CBJ does a great job of reporting on these and keeping us all up to speed. And I hope we continue to see that. And I think there's still plenty of space for all types of ownership groups in our industry. And so we'll see how we evolve. But I think it's important, actually, that we have all different types of facilities. And also, I mean, I would make that statement for our broader industry when it comes to wall builders and hold companies and everybody else, flooring systems, that we have a variety of folks in the playing field. It's important.
Here you go. That kind of gets, and I know we're running late. Do you have a little bit more time? We can keep talking. Okay. This might be a long one, but okay. I was hoping to get into you talk about what I'm kind of hearing is like differentiation and maybe financial models or operating models, and that kind of opens the door to talk about one of the other big hot buttons that people are especially sitting here today. This is early 2026. Our Gyms and Trends annual report, we're polishing it up, and we're going to be putting that out in a couple of weeks. I bet that's actually going to be out by the time this podcast comes out, close here. And the numbers are in. We did a big survey last year, and it was a tough year. And for a lot of people, flat, a little down sometimes, or at least much less growth than people were expecting. And the easy thing to point to, the easy thing the industry points to is like, oh, we're saturated now. There's too many climbing gyms. And I know that's a complex conversation. Do you, what would you say about that? Like the people that would write out say, oh, it was a tough year and it's because there's so many gyms. And I don't know what you do about that if you're an operator again.
Yeah, I've had a couple of conversations with friends in the industry, and saturation might be playing part of it, but I think also our industry is we're hitting like a maturation phase. And we've been around for a long, well, 30 some years, whatever. And we've had exponential growth for a really long time. And in any industry, in any business, you have cycles. Like, you can't just have upward momentum indefinitely. And so now, what do we do? Right. And because we need to continue to attract new climbers, dedicated yoga and fitness practitioners. And so I think it's really requiring us to make sure that we're putting the best product out there. And you mentioned some differentiation. I do think that that is really important. And, I think there's, funnily enough, like a similarity of what we saw with competition climbing for a stretch over the last 20 to 25 years, where if you'll kind of let me go tangential for a moment, we started like when you had first the Eastern Bouldering Series and then the American Bouldering Series, and it was USCCA. Well, it was JCCA at the time, actually. It was kind of like those two. And then it became USCCA and the ABS, and then they merged into USAC, USA Climbing. I should probably use full, not just the acronyms, because it becomes acronym soup with all the competition series. But and then we had the PCA, the Professional Climbers Association, which was also happening at the same time. And then, if you recall, we had NE2C came into the picture. And what we saw there, again, this is just like through my lens, but is people started coming into the competition market, like the literal climbing competition market. And so all of us had to up our game and make sure that what we were delivering was the best possible thing that we could deliver. And by so doing, it's my opinion that everybody improved. And I think that this is not too dissimilar from what we're seeing in the climbing and fitness facility world right now, where we all need to make sure we're bringing our A game so that we continue to offer the best possible product. So we continue to grow the number of climbers and yogis and fitness enthusiasts that come into our facilities, so that all of our businesses continue to do well and to grow. And then we continue to add more facilities and grow the sport. So I think that's part of it. There's macroeconomic pressure. Like, nobody can deny that factor too. Like, that is absolutely part of what's happening here. So it's like you've got all of these things that are happening, but I think this is a part where there's a plateau. And so now we figure out how to get back to that upward trajectory. And I think it's totally possible.
Yeah, you say the macroeconomic factors. We didn't, when we first started in the 90s and the early 2000s, that didn't make that big of a difference. I know there was the .com bubble and there were still lots of gyms opening up, but we've gotten big enough that plays a part.
Mm-hmm, it does.
I like that you say it forces excellence, and that's what people would say about competition. Like, if there's, and I think that's what a lot of operators find. Like, I'm the only gym in my neighborhood, or I'm only gym in my city, and there's someone else that's opening nearby, and it forces you to kind of have a hard look in the mirror and be like, okay, how am I gonna compete? I'm just curious, going back in time again. And by the way, that was my entrance to the industry too. I was in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1997, and the OG gym in 1997 was being put under pressure by the big $1 million gym, and it created an opening for me to acquire it. I brought it back to profitability. It's still there this day. They differentiated. They existed. They're like super OG gym. But they're still there here in 2026 operating. And so that can happen. Yeah. And you've been in this Boulder market where, like, when you and I first met, there was one gym, Cats. And Cats, but there was the Boulder Rock Club, and then you saw the spot open, and then you brought movement, and now there's a couple other little operators, and I'm curious, was that part of your model and your thought process when you brought their first movement? Was differentiation already a big factor? And, how did that affect what you did?
So we, Mike and I, we did have the advantage with USA Climbing of traveling around the country and around the world and seeing what was happening, real time in the industry, and doing these competitions. We were, sometimes even sleeping in the gyms, but we were in deep with all of the folks that were running those gyms. And so we could see what was occurring. And we felt like, coming back to our hometown, that we could bring something that was different than what was already offered. And just like you're saying, here in 2026, all those gyms you just named are still here because we've all have found our niche. We've all found what it is that we believe we can be best in the world at. And at that point in time for us, I don't know if you remember this, but the Movement Boulder location was on the cover of Urban Climber, if you remember that production in 2009. And so we were the first indoor facility to be on a climbing related magazine. And it was titled something like Future Gyms or whatever it is. And because I think at that point in time, again, go back, gosh, what is it, 17 years now to 2009. Most of the gyms, if they had yoga and fitness, it was like sort of kind of, but we made a dedicated push. We had like a big dedicated yoga studio. We had a cycling studio at the time, fitness studio. We had the stadium seating and the big open space, and, eventually hosted a World Cup at that facility. And so I do think that with that facility, we were differentiating in a way that our industry hadn't quite seen to that scale yet. And so I think that's part of the reason why we were able to succeed. And you've started to see, and since then have seen examples. Plenty of our friends have opened facilities where they too have differentiated and have put their special mark on things. And I think that's an awesome way to innovate and to create and to show who you are as a company.
Yeah, in your case, it wasn't even just differentiation. It was innovation. It was kind of bringing bits and pieces that you'd seen. Yeah. And I think a lot of people look at Movement Boulder as like it was kind of an epic epoch. It was a moment. It was an era that it opened a new era. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. It began a new thing. And there were big gyms before you. And notably, I'll point to Touchstone. I mean, they had some immense, incredible facilities that really opened the door. And I'm sure you learned lessons from them. And that's, you probably brought some of that to Movement. So, then fast forward to today, you're planning new gyms all the time. I'm sure you have a bunch of new ones in the pipeline, even that we haven't heard of. How much is it differentiating? Are you still differentiating? Are you still innovating? I think a lot of people that don't pay that much attention might look at these and it's just, oh, there's another mega gym that's doing everything. How are they wrong?
Yeah. So one thing I'll say, there is one gym we haven't announced quite yet that we are actually going to use as testing ground for some new ideas that we have. And, as a company, we actually just launched a new strategic plan, a multi-year strategic plan. And so some of our priorities for this year are around the member and guest experience and how we can continue to innovate and differentiate in the markets, not only where we are going to open up, but also where we are today. Because, you have a variety of gyms that are out there, and I don't believe that the size of the gym, you can't judge a book by its cover in terms of like how big a gym is. Like just because a gym is big or just because a gym is small, you're going to get a different experience based on the people that are there and the things that they offer. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's the important part, right? And so, of course, we'll continue to innovate. And it's one of Jim Collins's, he's a great business thinker. One of his thoughts is preserve the core and stimulate progress. And so constantly like paying attention to your core, whether it's like your core team members, your core member and guests, and then stimulate progress. Like, what are you doing that is going to move the needle, that is going to push the industry, that's going to push the company? And so that's always how our mindset is.
I love that. Yeah. So keep our eye on your announcements because there's something cool and different coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. When are we going to hear from that? Can you tease? Is you going to have an announcement this year?
2026, you bet.
Yeah. We'll hear about it by next Christmas. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm excited now. I want to see and hear about it. I have so many other questions that I kind of prepared and have glossed over because this has been great. I would love to go into one more little thing. If you have the time, this is going to kind of be a long call for us, but I hope if you're still listening, hopefully you're learning and getting inspired about this. I kind of want to broaden the conversation just for this last segment because climbing is more than the industry, right? Before there was an industry, I mean, I guess there's always been products, Yvon Chouinard was, making his pitons in his back of his van back in the 60s or whatever. There's always been an industry, but not like industry like we have now. And we have trade shows and lots of competition. But climbing is a lot bigger than that, actually. We like to, and plenty of people come to the gyms and are never going to climb outdoors. I think lots of people that come that never climb outdoors are still coming for that kind of identity of being a climber and maybe romanticize it. Kind of like if you're, living in the Midwest and you romanticize being a surfer and, eventually, every couple of years you find yourself on a coast and get to jump on a wave. I think climbing is that for a lot of people. It might not be part of their daily activity like we get blessed with here in Boulder. But at the end of the day, outdoors is a big part of it. And, more climbers means crowds and impacts on those places. And there's this conversation, some old crouchy people that don't ever go to the gyms be like, oh, indoor climbing is the problem. It's creating all these new climbers and they're crowding the crags and they're making it hard and whatever the impacts are that they're complaining about. But it's true. Also, like we are, as we grow, every new gym is bringing probably at least hundreds, depending on the location, and if not thousands or even tens of thousands of people into this sport. And certain percentage of those are going to migrate outdoors. And there's no denying. You probably saw the photos of the sad boulders or the happy boulders a couple of years ago where there's 300 cars along that road. And that's just the reality. It's more, and we are creating more climbers. So I have a personal feeling about that, but I'd love to hear, how do you feel about that? How do you juxtapose that we're pushing the industry forward and we want more people to enjoy this incredible activity that's climbing, but it also has this kind of dark side a little bit. And how do you think about that issue?
Yeah. Well, I want to call out the Access Fund here too, because I've worked with past directors and then now with Heather, she's doing a great job there. And Access Fund does a lot of great work with the local groups as well. So here it's BCC, the Boulder group. And a lot of it is around obviously conservation, preservation, and education. And that last piece in particular, I think is perhaps one of the most important. So I do believe that there is opportunity for gyms and groups like the Access Fund or whatever the local group is to continue to work together. I mean, so many of us already do, whether it's tabling at the gyms or doing fundraisers or trail days or you name it. So there's already a lot of really positive stuff that's happening out there. And then you've got, of course, the component of the Access Fund when they have the folks in Washington doing their part there as well. But I think a lot of it has to do around the education and the community piece. One of the things that I think anybody would experience in any climbing and fitness facility they walk into in our country is that's different from just a fitness facility is that people are interacting. Sometimes people might have in a headphone while they're climbing, but most of the time they're interacting with each other. They're sitting on the cubbies between burns on the bouldering wall, or, as one person is being lowered from their belay partner or whatever it is, and they're talking. And what I think we would do well as in terms of an industry is you continue that to the outdoor component as well. And so continuing that community aspect and especially the mentorship piece. Because the more that those of us that have been outdoors a lot, can help teach the next generation that's coming through in terms of how to treat the outdoors, like L&T or leave no trace, wag bags, all of those components that are going to help keep our outdoors clean and help preserve them. That is a way that we can pay it forward for all of the folks that are to come, because our whole world is becoming more populated. It's not just climbing. And so if we can help steward that next generation into the sport that we love, because doesn't everybody here want people to have the experience with climbing that we have had? Think about how many soul-filling moments that we have been able to have because we climb. Like, why would you ever want to deny somebody that? And so if the perceived negative outcome is overuse, then let's try to turn that around. Let's try to make that a positive thing and to share the knowledge that we have. So that, you'll have to forgive my little soapbox, but I do feel pretty passionately about this, especially in regards that we can change it. Like we can fix it.
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's a topic that a lot of us that have been around for a while, because we feel the difference in what it was like 30 years ago versus what it's like now. If you're just coming out now, this is the normal. This is what you know. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of us that feel passionately about it. I have to admit, I had a short era that I was the grumpy old guy, and I was like, oh, these people, they're at my favorite crag. But I quickly got beyond that and just realized, like, what, to your point, like what's climbing has given me. And, I guess it's a little bit hippie Boulder thing. It was like, well, I want that for the world, right? Like let's all experience, and if it's not climbing, if it's bird watching or skiing or whatever the thing is, like get out and enjoy, and I can't fault you for wanting to do that, and climbing gyms open the door for those people to enrich their lives like that. So we just have to address it. So what's turn a bit back, that the answer about mentorship, and I agree, like if you got experience, you've got this great opportunity to give back and be a mentor. It's kind of a tough question, and I've asked gyms and a lot of owners, we run our gyms and we say this, and we have our gym to crag, and we kind of give that line. But at the end of the day, I hear a lot of gyms, I was like, it's actually not my responsibility. I'm running a business here. It's not, there's a limit to how much, and then there's all these people that are never going to climb outside. So why would, when I, bring education into my gym in an oppressive way, almost, where like people are going to have to sit through and leave no trace thing before they can belay in my gym. Like, I'm not going to do that. That's not my job. But what is our job as the people that are the entry point for so many more climbers? What can we do? What should we do as gyms?
I think that we don't yet have the concrete answer. And I say that from a place of having had a lot of conversations, like I was saying, with past Access Fund directors and now Heather as well. And I think there is opportunity there for all of us to figure out what that thing is that we can do, because we are businesses. That is a true statement. And yet I do, like, as humans, I think we have a responsibility to help each other and to teach each other when we can. And so, I think I look forward to what we might be able to do as an industry to help this, but I don't have the answer.
Yeah, just curious. Maybe you might go back and say, hey, innovate. try new things, and every crag is different and every community is different, and so figure it out. I do think that is a big answer. This is solved on a local level, if not an individual level. It's right. It's a local thing. All right. Well, I could go backwards and ask so many more questions about these things. Is there anything that we haven't covered in this session that you'd like to say? Do you have a line? Do you have a question, or do you have a thing that that is kind of burning inside that you want to make sure people hear?
I don't know that I have a question. I have a ton of questions. Like, one of the things I love is going to the CWA or traveling around the country and meeting people that are in our industry and hearing what their experiences are. And so, my question is always, what is your experience and what excites you and what do you see for our future? And I think, gosh, we've covered a wealth of topics today. The only thing I might offer and say, like, as we move through this next iteration of our industry, because there's always ebbs and flows, right? For any company, for any industry, for any human. And what I might say is just don't lose sight of what we're doing as an industry, because it's pretty spectacular. I may have said this to you, Scott. I've definitely talked to some of my friends and fellow team members about this, but I had a mentor, an advisor early on, and he gave me the advice. He said, you need to figure out when you get knocked down for the 9th time, what is that thing that is going to get you up for the 10th time? And I will tell you, I have been knocked down way more times than just 9. But the thing that continues to get me up is the people. It's the people that I've had the pleasure of meeting through this industry. It's like you and I, like this relationship. It's all the people with whom I get to work at Movement, because, I'll be out and I'll talk to people who say that climbing has changed their life for the positive, or they had an experience at Movement or another gym that has been so profoundly impactful for them. And every time I hear that, I thank my lucky stars that I get to work in an industry that has the potential to positively impact the world, because not everybody can say that. And it is so easy for us as humans to feel like we're, that it's challenging, or that there's too many ups and downs, or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, I really believe that, like, that is true for me. And so I just would encourage everybody to keep that in perspective.
Climbing makes the world a better place.
Amen.
Back to the hippie stuff. I thank you so much. Any shout outs you'd like to give to?
Oh my gosh. Where do I even start? Huge shout out obviously to my husband. He's been an integral piece of this. And, I might be the one on these podcasts, but you better believe he's that strength of support right alongside me. And like I said, our families have been huge in this. And then all of the folks at Movement, every single person is amazing. And our industry, the list is so long. I have huge, deep wells of gratitude for everybody in our industry, because we're all doing this together at the end of the day.
Kindred souls. Yeah. Thanks for your time, Anne-Worley. This was really, I enjoyed it very much. I'm glad that we stayed on business. That we could have fallen into nostalgia. You and I have known each other for a long time. I'm glad we spoke to the future here, I think. And I hope the listeners, if you were listening, I hope you got something out of this. Help run your own business, guide your own career. Worley, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Scott. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation that I had with Worley as much as I did. It was awesome to hear her insights and perspectives about the industry and careers and what's going on at Movement. So if you liked what you heard, we put new episodes out every couple of weeks. We do some for route setters and some for other gym and staff and employees and managers. Check us out, climbingbusinessjournal.com. At the homepage there, all the new stuff always flows through there. We have webinars and articles and data reports, and we talk about gyms and products and holds and all kinds of stuff. So make sure you're subscribing to our newsletters and follow us on the socials. We're on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and X and now YouTube. So maybe you're watching this on YouTube. That's kind of a new effort for us, but we'll see you next time. Thanks for being with us. Cheers.